You did good, Sonia. You made it. And now we're going to lean into ease and joy and excitement and pleasure. And what I found instead was this daily longing that almost turned into like a haunting, where I could just start to feel sort of like that dissonance between, me wanting to like something, me wanting to feel aligned in this role, in this job, when instead all I was really feeling was like, is this really what my purpose is here? Is this enough for me? And I don't think I had any idea what any of those questions meant at the time. It was just this discomfort on a daily basis that kept growing and kept getting deeper. And I didn't know what to do about it because I had made it.
Are you curious about discovering ways of making your life better? Then welcome to my podcast. I'm Bob Nickman, and this is The Exploding Human. Listen in while I talk with all kinds of people in the fields of personal growth, health and healing, alternative therapies, psychology, spirituality, environment, and the future. I'm looking for those answers that make life better for everyone. You'll meet cutting-edge practitioners, doctors, artists, filmmakers, business people, and those who have overcome challenges. The brave, the curious, anyone who's out there helping us humans to explore, expand, and explode. Hey, welcome to The Exploding Human. My name is Bob Nickman. My guest today is Sonia Jhas, and we are going to be talking about how after years of achieving and accomplishing and competing and becoming highly successful in the corporate world and on the verge of being married, she realized none of these things were making her happy. And she began to drastically change her life to where she is today. But first, I'd like to invite you to visit my website, theexplodinghuman.com. Over there, you can listen to episodes, read synopses, see photos of my guests, and there's a little bio on myself. Also, there is a YouTube channel where you can listen. That is The Exploding Human with Bob Nickman. As I said, my guest today is Sonia Jhas. She is a certified personal trainer and nutritionist. She has given a TED Talk, she's written a book, and she is a mindset expert. Sonia's is a story of reaching the pinnacle of what the expectations her family had for her and what she had for herself, and how those things were not working for her. Out of sheer desperation and unhappiness with where her life was, she began to change things in a big way. It confused a lot of people as well as herself. She talks very openly, very honestly about what she was going through and what she goes through today after making these fabulous changes in her life. And I know there's something here everyone can relate to. So without further hesitation, let's get into this. Here she is. This is Sonia Jhas. Great to have you on the show, Sonia. And what a fun little talk we just had before we started.
I have a pretty strong suspicion this is going to be a really fun episode.
Well, and it was nothing that we can really, sort of talk about what you do. But
no.
The thing that intrigued me when I watched your TED Talk, and folks, you should watch Sonia's TED Talk because it really gives you a great insight into who she is and where she comes from. And what I was the most fascinated by was and I think, all kids have this, they want to please their parents, but there's cultural and familial expectations of us growing up that can be really, they can hamstring us to the point where we can't be our authentic selves.
Yeah.
And you experienced that, obviously, coming from the culture you come from. It was even more so probably than mine. Although I had a lot of expectations. I was told you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer.
Yeah.
College is a must. And I did go to college where I didn't really do much except party.
Like I technically went.
I went.
Worth it? I don't know.
And I was glad that it kept me out of the job market for 4 years and I could read cool stuff. But I didn't know what I was doing. I just was supposed to. But tell us about that and how you pulled out of that expectation and found this other part of yourself that was always there.
Well, Bob, it has been such a tumultuous journey because, growing up in, your relatively traditional South Asian households, it's like you don't even know where your parents' expectations, where their evaluation criteria ends and where yours begin. It's such an enmeshed sense of self. And my brother was born gifted. He was, an effortless high achiever. And, I think it was just the understanding, like the unsaid understanding in the household that this was a climate of excellence and that this was going to be the journey that we're on, regardless of the price that you have to pay, right? Like it is like we are putting our head down, we are getting to the end destination, and then we can worry about being happy then because we'll have satisfied the ticky marks. We'll have gotten to where we need to go for fulfillment. And I think for me, I didn't even question it really. I didn't question it because I believed the cause and effect. I believed the formula. I think I already sort of wanted it for myself so desperately because I wanted to prove that I was good enough. I was just as good as my brother. I could be that excellent. And I think had maybe he not been in the equation and my parents had these expectations, I maybe could have been like, is this reasonable? But because there was a system or a model that seemed to work because my brother was, the poster child for all 850 of our family friends, being his sister, I think for me just gave me the contrast that I needed to be like, my only job here really is to desperately do whatever I need to do to satisfy the expectations so that they think I'm good enough, so that I think I'm good enough. And I think, coming out of university, after having, clawed my way through the whole thing and the awards and getting, the youngest executive position at IBM Canada with this giant portfolio. And just, it was this coveted job that I had wanted so badly throughout university, finally getting it, coming out the other side. I think I really believed, as naive as it sounds, that I'd finally feel good. Like I'd actually be able to sit back and say, you did good, Sonia. You made it. And now we're going to lean into ease and joy and excitement and pleasure. And what I found instead was this daily longing that almost turned into like a haunting, where I could just start to feel sort of like that dissonance between, me wanting to like something, me wanting to feel aligned in this role, in this job, when instead all I was really feeling was like, is this really as good as I'm going to feel? Is this really what my purpose is here? Is this enough for me? And I don't think I had any idea what any of those questions meant at the time. It was just this discomfort on a daily basis that kept growing and kept getting deeper. And I didn't know what to do about it because I had made it and I had also done the business degree and I wasn't going to become a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer at this point in time. There was a model that I was sort of living in and you don't think you're actually going to just burn the whole thing down. That seems ridiculous. Yeah. But, I think it's like when you get uncomfortable enough, when you feel like you are backed into a corner that is so tight that you feel like you're going to die. It's like the death feeling inside. It forces you, I think, to tap into courage. And I think through the courage becomes sort of this environment of curiosity and collecting data and trying to peel back the layers on like what's really wrong and how do you get to the other side. And it wasn't a quick and easy transition, of course, but to your point, I mean, I did. I was able to sort of go through, I think, the inner journey, or at least the beginnings of the inner journey. As I've realized now, apparently the journey's never going to end. So it's like, chapter 1 of the journey began.
Yeah.
And in that, I think I started to feel myself somewhere in there. Like not this idea of Sonia, but feeling some seed of my authentic self somewhere in there. And while I didn't have any answers, there was this calling, there was this need to feel that more. It was almost like there was a slight awakening to what it feels like to be the real you. And even though it's such a slight taste, it becomes the catalyst, it becomes the momentum, because all of a sudden you can feel that disconnect between who you've been performing to be this whole time. And while you don't know who you really are, you just know that you have to find out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I sure do. I mean, you're almost like you're playing a character that you didn't even audition for. You just got assigned this character in life. And we all have a certain amount of those expectations. And then when that restlessness, I will call it that, comes.
Restlessness.
Because the thing about the body and the inner life and all that, it doesn't know how to lie. It just doesn't know how to do that. We do, but that part of us does not. Yep. And so there is, and this is why people, you wonder, like, what happened to that guy? He was doing so great. Well, he actually wasn't doing so great.
No,
but he was
performing great.
Right. If you live inauthentically, I'm not saying it's anybody's fault. It just sort of happens to people.
Yep.
There's going to be a price on the B side, and you hit that wall and you went, I just remember I have a friend, and I'm not going to say his real name, but let's just say his name was Bill Johnson.
Okay.
He went to his parents when he was about 16 or 17 years old. They had asked him to do something, or they expected something. And he looks at his parents. He goes, I am tired of being Bill Johnson, and I'm not going to do it anymore.
Oh, my goodness.
And I was like, whoa, man.
Man.
Yeah. Young.
That was insane. I'm like, but that's ballsy, that young, but also so admirable, because you're like, wow, to know at that age that you're like, I can't keep up the charade anymore. It's too much work.
Yeah, he wouldn't do it. And, I'm wondering, I just want to think about this for a second, because I'm going back in my own childhood to when I felt great, exuberant and free, because all little kids are that,
Absolutely.
I mean, you have little children, you've seen it, and you've been that.
Yep.
And at what point, what was that feeling like when you were, maybe you were 4 or 5 or 6, I mean, you certainly didn't have huge expectations put on you at those ages, except to, maybe not wet the bed or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But what would make you happy then that has sort of lasted till now? And I'm not saying the specific activity, but the feeling, what was that? Can you remember that? Because I can remember some things that go way back to childhood where I just felt so alive.
Oh, that's a good word.
And it had nothing to do with achievement or any of that.
It's interesting that you say that. I've been sort of digging through those memories myself lately, because as I continue to journey, as we all are, and, you start with talk therapy, you move into somatic therapy, and you're just sort of trying to connect the mind and body in a way that you're not living with a totally dysregulated nervous system in fight or flight all the time. Because, as you said, it's like the body doesn't lie inside, right? It's like no matter how much we're, sing-songing on the outside in our brains, all that sort of packaging that we do, the body is keeping the score. And as I've been reflecting on these memories and, having some conversations with friends and things like that, it's become so clear to me that, like, I don't know what I like anymore. I don't know what I like, or what brings me that sort of childlike feeling of doing for the sheer joy of doing it, not for the outcome, not for the excellence, not for the performance of it all, not for the validation. And, when I think about that question, I'm like, there was a time that, because I have a very good ear, I would love, at the age of 4, playing the Sesame Street theme song on the piano, or like nursery rhymes or things like that. And it just was like, oh, this is so exciting. I can use my ear and I can make music. And then very quickly, because my parents were like, she has an excellent ear, and my brother was already well down the path of his piano, I, got hooked into the piano system at the age of 4, and then was, with strict Russian piano teacher doing the Royal Conservatory curriculum, was very quickly shifted, I think, internally from a place of music brings me joy, making music brings me joy, to I'm behind, I haven't practiced enough, I'm going to get in trouble. Oh God, I'm not good enough at this. And I mean, that led to essentially me taking piano to the very end of grade 9. So grade 9 piano. So like essentially just to the end of being a professional piano player. And then I didn't touch a piano again for 32 years, essentially. I just was like, never doing this again if I don't have to.
Yeah, because the joy got hammered out of you.
Exactly. And it was the same thing though with sports. It was the same thing with dance. It was like I loved swimming. So then I became a competitive swimmer. I loved tennis. So then I became a competitive tennis player. And in having to take these activities to whatever the next level was, I'm not ordinary at this. I am excellent at this. The chase for excellence in all hobbies, in all categories, sort of robbed that feeling of unbridled enthusiasm that I know I had at the age of 4. So when you ask me that question, I'm like, dance and moving my body and sports and music and really connecting with people, like really just feeling like warmth and connection with people, which also very quickly changed. And all of that still exists now, but I'm now in this almost 40-year-old journey of trying to like reteach my nervous system to feel okay at our grand piano as I start to come back to these amazing skills that I technically have, right? Like this summer was the first summer I started playing tennis again with my brother. And I was like, okay, how do we bring this back to a place of ease and joy and fun, honoring the talent that I have, but not needing to make this a project of excellence. And it goes so deep, so hard.
Yeah. Well, it's a lot of unneeded pressure and everything, all those that type of achievement oriented everything or activity.
Everything. Yep.
Yeah. It's the idea of it is that if you achieve a certain level, you're going to be happy or happier. Mm-hmm. And that idea is balanced on the head of a pin because it doesn't necessarily mean that. Mm-hmm. And that belief system, and I don't know why that competitive nature of some human beings and many human beings have to turn everything into a competition. Like there's something to win. You're going to die at the end. There's nothing to win.
I think that the something to win piece, though, is coming from that intrinsic not good enoughness.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I think that is the self-worth piece that's keeping so many people, myself included, on the hamster wheel of achievement, because there's this hole that everyone's hoping to plug. And I think the older and wiser we all get, the more we're like, oh, that's bullshit. So there's nothing out there that's going to do it. This is in here. And now the journey has to change.
So here's one of the obstacles to changing growing up that way is the inevitable disappointment that your parents and your family and maybe even your particular community is going to have with this change, this rebellion, let's even call it.
Yeah.
What they're going to say about you, how you're going to disappoint these people.
Yeah.
Some people even have it where they're actually rejected from their family. Yeah. The family goes, you can't do this. We, a lot of it happens with certainly you can't marry out of your religion, for example. Yeah. And I know you were going to get, I'm not saying that happened because I don't know, but I know you were going to get married.
I was. Yep. I was. And then
what happened when you told your parents, I'm not going to be this Sonia that you have groomed to be a person? And I'm sure it wasn't like an overnight discussion. I'm sure it kind of happened slowly. You were probably doing some stuff in secret. We won't say secret. We'll say on your own. You were exploring, I'm guessing. I mean, who goes to their parents and goes, everything you taught me doesn't work for
everything
me.
you taught me is wrong. The whole model's flawed. I'm burning it down. Bye. Yeah, I get you.
So what, did you have a lot of blowback from people, or was the love strong enough they went, okay, let's go for it, we love you so much?
No, the calling off of the wedding was a real tug of war for the whole family, and it was very challenging. It's actually why the wedding didn't get called off until 2 weeks before, because it actually took my grandfather stepping in and being like, this is absurd. We don't force people to get married in this household.
Oh, so it was pretty
enough.
They really dug in on it. Okay.
They really dug in. And I think, it's interesting, right? Because what they were backed into a corner of not being able to discern which mistake would be the biggest mistake of my life, right? Calling off the wedding and then being this like 40-year-old cat lady spinster woman who's an untouchable because she was used damaged goods, or, going through with the wedding, being trapped in this relationship that was sucking the soul out of me, to a man that honestly they didn't really like anyway. It wasn't them that were pushing me to get married that young. It was actually that my fiance was 6 years older and he was in a rush to get married. And I was like, well, if I'm going to do it, I may as well just do it. And that way I'm not in trouble by him, not in trouble by them.
Okay.
And then through sort of that exploration of self in that last year of university where I had gotten the job, I'd gotten the dean's list. It was the first time that I was like, okay, lady, like maybe you just want to like chill out for a bit, considering you're getting married at the end of June and you've got like 6 months left to live, which in hindsight now, as I say this, is a ludicrous thought to have, that you're getting married and your life is going to end. So get it all in now is already like a wild red flag, obviously. But my parents deeply struggled with their evaluation criteria, their values, right? On one hand, I had made like an ethical, moral commitment to a man and his family. And I owed it to them to follow through with this commitment that I had made without, taking the course of action like I did, which was going to like burn their family down, burn our family down, the whole thing, right? So there was that piece of it, which was I made a decision and it's my like moral duty to follow through. The other side of it was, holy shit, this is our daughter. And she's saying she doesn't want to get married and she's only 21 years old. And like, we didn't even really want her to get married to begin with, but now we're here and we have to make a decision, or we have to help her make this decision and then bear the responsibility of knowing that we may have chosen wrong. And then what do we do? And, feelings were never spoken about in our household. It was not welcome. It wasn't a comfortable environment of any kind to talk about anything that wasn't practical. And so there just wasn't a climate of communication, I guess is the starting point of all of this. And there also was no handbook for how do we as a family move through hard things. So my dad, has always suffered through like really covert anxiety and, periods of depression that I had no idea growing up. So, it was the perfect trigger for him to go into a full blown anxiety, depressive spiral that landed him in the hospital.
Right.
And the rest of the family essentially just crumbled. But what came from that was that there was no foundation to go back to. Like we burned down the house of cards because everybody shattered, everybody broke, and everybody had to find their new version of truth in this aftermath. And it sounds so dramatic as I'm saying it, because like literally everybody calls off their wedding now. Like 10 years ago in the Brown community, it was quite different. I was the first, but here we are now where everybody's like, no big deal. We're all getting divorces. Nobody cares. But it was for me probably the single most important turning point of my life, right? Because the momentum inside was taking over.
Yeah.
Where I was like, I don't have a choice. I'm not doing this for fun. I don't have a choice. I have to get out. And in maybe for the first time ever, actually claiming responsibility and believing it intrinsically that even if this is the worst decision of my life, I still owe it to myself to make it because I believe this to be my truth. It's like there was a reclaiming of self in that. There was I'm willing to face the consequences of having to be true to myself. And that shifted not only me and how I lived every day after that, but it shifted my family as well. Like the dad that I grew up with doesn't exist anymore. And it's hard to then look at that family environment and appreciate the reality of what you went through when the people that were there don't exist anymore because they all broke and then they found their truth and they found their authenticity and were like, fuck this, I'm going to live my life and my version of alignment. And then all the players are different and how we relate and interact with each other is different. And it's been beautiful to get to know each other again somehow.
I love hearing that. There's nothing like desperation to get somebody to do something which they may not even realize is courageous at the time. It's really born out of a desperation. Like, if I don't do this, I'm going to die.
I'm going to die.
So it's a survival thing. And then when one person changes a family, their dynamic, the rest of the family starts to change too, if they want to, but usually they can't help it because everything is, and whatever untruth was being lived can't exist in that situation.
Anymore.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And you had no idea that was going to ripple that way, I'm sure.
No.
Nobody does.
Nobody does. But as you said, there's no way to hook back into the same patterns when one person changes the fabric, right? So it's the same with everything, right? It's the same with couples and relationships and all the work that all of us are doing to try and like be happier with the people around us. It's always coming back to our relationship with ourselves and shifting that so that then, the system starts to change.
So after all this transpired, and, obviously it wasn't one day it's one way, the next day it's not, but it was a big thing that happened.
It was a big thing.
And then how did you start to come to, what did you start doing that was so different that led you to becoming somebody that, did a TED talk and wrote a book and is really an advocate for people to, as corny as this has become, step into their power. Let's just
I know.
say that
I know. It's like we all gagged when you said that, but it's true. It is true. I think, for me, the stepping into your power piece of it was not intentional. As we talked about earlier, that desperation and that discomfort that I was experiencing in the corporate world led me to then do my executive MBA, because when is further education not the answer to the "are you happy" problem? It was the only way I knew how to solve the problem. I was like, okay, well, if I just get my executive MBA, then I'll just change industries and then the discomfort will be gone, right? I still believed the problem was out there.
More letters equals more money equals more happiness.
That's exactly it. And once I did my executive MBA and I switched to a smaller technology company and I was living a different version of the corporate life, I think that data for me was just, the quick little solidifier to be like, this is not about working at Big Blue IBM. Okay, this is just fundamentally not going to work for you. You can keep trying to put different versions of lipstick on this pig. Not going to happen. You did the executive MBA. Now you've got further education. Good for you. You got to find something else. And I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know where to find it. I didn't know where to look. I didn't know how to have these conversations. I didn't know how to explain to anybody how somebody so privileged could be so unhappy on the inside. And I decided that if the only way for me to experience relief was to go on mat leave, then I would just like have a baby and then go on mat leave. And then I'd be like a mother, and then nobody could judge me for loving my children so much. And then I could just like have made a covert exit without anybody realizing, and then like figure out the plan then. So it wasn't courage at this time. It was like, how do I strategically orchestrate a way to not be judged and do this? What ended up happening was, in order to have a child, I had to confront the fact that I had had a really unhealthy relationship with my body my entire life. I had suffered from anorexia all throughout high school. I had suffered from bulimia all throughout university. I was on the hamster wheel of weight loss perpetually. I was desperately chasing thinness the same way I was desperately chasing success. And it was all I could think of as a starting point for getting to know the path of healing for myself. I was like, you can't have eating disorders for the rest of your life and hate yourself and your body. So let's start there. What I didn't realize was that in abandoning the timelines of thinness and reteaching myself the fundamentals of fitness and nutrition and focusing on strength instead of size and digging through all the layers of noise and the stories and the lies that I had been telling myself for so many years, I uncovered a new relationship with myself, one that at least had like a slight tone of working with my body, with myself, not against it, right? The war was suddenly ending in that internal environment. And that's, I think, where the birthplace of wanting to help people came in, because I thought I was going on a journey to fix my relationship with my body. What ended up happening was it was the birthplace for like a new environment for me to connect with myself. And it was infectious. It was the piece that I think I for the first time started to feel like alive. And I like found myself wanting to go up to people in gyms being like, you're bobbing up and down on the elliptical and you're doing it all wrong, lady. Like, I can help you. You're wasting your time with incessant cardio that isn't going to work. And so I think in calling off the wedding, I suddenly had like a new taste bud. There was new feeling available to me. And if as long as I sort of stayed connected to that instead of the what do people think? What are they going to say? Where is it going to go? How did this look? This validation piece from the outside, as long as I could stay connected to that hint, that little whisper, I could somehow figure out what the right next step would be. And it was from there that I decided to take on like one client while working in the corporate world, just to be like, do I even like helping people? Like, maybe I just like feeling good in my own body, but that doesn't mean I need to become a teacher. One client turned into 6, turned into 13. I was doing 2 jobs at the same time all day, every day. I was sleeping 3 hours, and the contrast was so palpable. I would wake up in the morning at 4 a.m. and be so excited to get to do this with people, to train them. And then I would want to die at 8:30 in the morning again. And then I would come back to life again in the evening. You know, and you're just like, okay, that is really clear. There's only so long that you can stay numb. And when you can feel things, it's, again, stupid thing that we're going to acknowledge here in this moment. But like, turns out feelings hold all the answers. And if you let yourself feel, decision-making can become a lot more aligned rather than these, giant, massive course corrects that I've had to do in my life. And that to me has been the ongoing journey, right? Because it's like at each layer, there's another layer, and at each layer, there's another layer. And how do you continue to honor the truth of how you feel and know that is the data you're looking for? It doesn't need to be more complicated than that.
Was there any one or several people or any type of books or knowledge that kind of presented itself where it almost, and I recall some of these things happening in my youth of that made it, it gave me permission to know I could do other things because there were people doing things that were out of the things that were, I thought were expected of me. And I went, oh, I don't have to do it this way. And I remember there was a number of things that were heavily influencing on my life. A lot of it came out of the music I was listening to because it was, I was sort of a tail end hippie, and I was very into listening to a lot of music. So there was a lot of counterculture messaging that I was getting. And that really kind of saved me.
I love that.
Yeah.
Actually, in hindsight, I should probably go listen to some like old school hippie music now. I could use a little bit of armor in, this next chapter. So that's an interesting actually way of looking at it, to say that, even just through music, you were feeling that shift, that was the messaging coming.
And I learned about certain books and certain types of, and I was also involved in the drug culture. So I was doing psychedelics, and that was sort of, it
cracking
was
you open.
Well, so yes and no. I mean, at least while you're high, you're cracked open. After that, you're not. I mean, once you come down, you forget it all. Except for maybe little hints.
Yeah.
But, all that stuff was very important in shaping a worldview that wasn't the one of my parents' generation.
Yeah.
So I felt fortunate. I feel now that I look back, I'm fortunate that I came up during that time and I had access to that.
Yeah.
But I remember, reading certain books, like The Doors of Perception and books like that were very powerful things of like, oh, there's another way to look at things.
There's another way to look at this.
Did you have any major influences in that, or you're still, or it sounds like you did a lot of this in a vacuum, in a sense?
I did. Yeah. It's a great question. And it's the first time I'm reflecting on the fact that no, I mean, I was always sort of, the girl reading self-help books, like even in high school.
That's something. I mean,
always reading self-help books, just like I think unknowingly desperate for like a feeling of relief, or like I'm not alone in this, or I'm not damaged, or it's going to be okay. If I'm reflecting on it now, I'm like, none of it landed. It was all theoretical and it all made sense. And yet I felt like it didn't apply to me and the nuances of my circumstances and my dad's eyeballs and the sternness of our household and being brown. Like none of it felt relatable. It felt like, like that is how white people get to live.
I could see that. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, oh, look, like there's freedom on the other side if you're not brown. And so it's like I was doing it because I was seeking relief. I wasn't getting the relief, but I was still doing it anyway. What I will say is when I moved from being a personal trainer and nutrition specialist to wanting to work with people on the mindset front and wanting to become a speaker and wanting to write a book and all those things, I'd say that was probably the birthplace of me really being able to not only consume content through authors and podcasters and all of the, like, hello, Brene Brown, like I will just follow you until the end of time, like it was then that I think there was like a real landing. So it was like, yes, I was not only being inspired and I was not only taking in this meaningful content of coming home to yourself and how do you do that and why is it important? But it was landing, I think, finally, like in my system, in my nervous system. It was actually becoming a part of the shift for me mentally. It was coloring how I was starting to think, which was really nice, and music and all of that. But also just, I think the environment, right? Over the last 10 years, becoming an entrepreneur has become more mainstream than anything else. And when I was making the move from the corporate world to like becoming a personal trainer and nutrition specialist, my parents were like, I'm sorry, you're going to now teach people how to exercise like the way you could have at Good Life for $15 an hour. Have you lost your mind? And I mean, I made that move because it was the only move I could make at the time to get me out of the vortex that I was in. But I think it was only in doing that for enough period of time that I was like, this isn't it either. Yes, this got me away from that, which was square peg round hole, but this isn't it for me either. This may be a part of it forever, but my soul is not coming to life here. I think it was there that there was this desire and motivation to really take everything that I was learning and reading and soaking in from all of these people and put it into put it into like real life practice for the next iteration for that, Sonia 3.0 or 7.0 or whatever it was at that point in time. There's been so many iterations of it. And there's so much of it that I continue to do. Like I just read The Untethered Soul again for the fourth time 2 weeks ago, because it's like, when do you not need that refresher? I don't think I'll ever stop consuming that much from other people, because it's all framed slightly differently. It's all got its own little flavor, and you just never know what is that nugget where something lands in a way that it hasn't been able to land for you in the vacuum that you're doing your own work in. And for me, it was a vacuum, because there was nobody that I could look to who had the handbook or the rule book or was willing to try to do something different. And even now it is wildly confusing in many ways.
Sure. But it sounds like you're becoming that person that you needed to you needed for yourself. You're now becoming that person to be that for other people who are maybe in a similar situation. And I'm sure you've helped other people from your, subculture, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
I think I trust her. She comes from my community.
She gets it. Yeah, she gets it. The willingness to look, the willingness to try, the willingness to not hide from yourself, I think, is the difference between moving one step closer to a little more self-compassion, a little bit more ease, a little bit more flow, a little bit more love, which I think we all want so badly, and we're seeking it from others, not realizing that we're just not giving it to ourselves because we don't want to open the drawers and reorganize them in ways that we can look at ourselves with love.
And a lot of it's just like, well, if I do my authentic thing that I really want to do, what are other people going to think of me?
Yeah.
And how will I survive if they don't think well of me?
Yes. And yet, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, sometimes you do that, and because some people aren't doing that, they will attack or put you down or judge you, but it's really on their side of it. They wish they could do it.
Absolutely. And the one thing I will say that I'm always marveled by is that we are so much meaner to ourselves than everybody else is. Like, we're just the fucking worst. And so this fear of judgment and criticism and what are people going to say? I mean, I got nothing but support and love from all of our family friends and our relatives when I called off the wedding, because they were just like, good for you for doing the hard thing. If only more people would stop before they get married and ask themselves these questions. Good for you. Same thing when I quit my job. I mean, I guess nobody really had any idea what I was doing, but as the picture started to develop, they were just like, I wish I could have been this brave. I wish I could have done something that felt really good to me. I wish there was a part of me that was responding to that call for myself. And I think what I experience more and more from myself as well is the more I see out there of these things that people are doing, these choices that they're making, the way people are living, the more that I'm healing myself, the more I am marveled and inspired and just happy that I get to see examples of this so that I can now do what I need to do for myself to be able to move in a direction that, feels that inspired or whatever it is. But so rarely am I like, you suck. It sucks. I'm just going to be sitting here in my corner talking shit about you. Like, I just think that that's so often such an inflamed idea in our heads that isn't actually how most people are looking at other people.
I think women have a whole different set of those things than men have a little bit more permission to do certain things. And
for sure.
And I've seen it with, my wife is super creative. It does all this cool stuff, and she takes a lot of heat for it from people. And, I've always told her she could, I like that she's feisty and creative and interesting. And I'm like, oh, fuck these people. Do whatever you want. I mean, I don't, I want you to do that stuff.
Yeah.
But there's a lot, and I've had even, guys I know, like, make these comments about her, the things she does. And I'm like, well, who the hell are you? There was some guy walked by. I didn't know him. My wife does a lot of beautiful landscaping and
Oh,
gardening.
wow.
And she's a designer
Lovely.
some major talent, in my opinion.
Amazing.
Not just because I love her. She's
Oh,
really
no. I can hear
so she's
pride
always
here.
outside working in her garden. It's like her laboratory,
Yeah, of
almost, our
course.
front
Yeah.
yard. And some guy walks by and he's talking to her and he says, "When are you going to be done?" And I said to the guy, I go, "Would you ask Jimi Hendrix when he's going to be done playing guitar?"
That's so weird.
I go, it's the same thing. It's no different.
Yeah.
And he just, I was a little bit of a dick about it, but he,
I know, but I
was
actually
mad.
really admire that you said that. That's
but he kind of hung his head and he walked away.
Mm-hmm.
That part I felt bad about, but I was also like, think about it. Think about it for 1 second. Why would somebody want to be done with something they love? And why do you give a shit what somebody else is doing on their own property? I mean, what's going on at your house?
Well, but I think this is the thing, right? People who are looking through that critical lens or making the statements or whatever, what they're reacting to obviously is only about them, not about you. The other piece of it is it's usually just their reaction to what they feel is the audacity of somebody to do whatever, right? Like, what is it about you that makes you think that you get to do that or should do that or whatever it is?
We need to stop this joy right now.
We need to stop this joy right now. Yes, because if you have it and if you're doing it, then that means I could have it and I could do it too, but that's hard. And I don't want to do that kind of work. And that's stressful. And I feel good in my brokenness. And what I know is what I know, and it's safe. And so I'm not going to make that choice. I'm not going to break the house of cards down. So then if you don't do it, then I don't have to look at myself, because then it's just, we're all doing the same dance. Right. And I think that's the hard part for people, is that poking that it creates within themselves. Yeah.
People trying to stop you doing cool stuff. I don't know. It's a rough one. And, good. I have to say, there's a part of it that you go, well, maybe they're right. There's always that part of yourself where you go, maybe I shouldn't. Yep. Not a big part, but
I think that's also unrealistic to not have the part. I mean, how do you not have the part? We just don't want that part driving the car.
Well, I feel like we've really gotten to some great stuff today.
It was so lovely chatting with you. You're just so relaxed.
I'm a delight, Sonia.
Yeah, you are. No, you are.
So are you.
No, like I'm literally looking at you through a screen, and I'm like, I just like your energy. Like it's just you're a delight to be around. You are.
Yeah. Well, same over here. Back at you through the magic of the internet. Yes. Let's talk about your website and your book and all the wonderful things that is Sonia Jhas that's going on in the world.
Yeah.
Of Sonia.
So there is a book. Came out this year. I guess it's been a handful of months now. It's called I'll Start Again Tomorrow and Other Lies I've Told Myself. And the book takes you through my personal journey, getting off the hamster wheel of weight loss, finally ending the on the wagon, off the wagon cycle, and finding freedom on the other side of that specific chapter. I will say that there are a lot of lies. And so, the journey continues even after the book. But it was wonderful to write it. And it's been just amazing to receive so much feedback and support from people who have read it, being like, it's like you were in my head. I thought I was the only one who was quietly like dying in a shame spiral. And it's been very rewarding to have people connect, I think, with both the pain, but also with the hope of something different. So that's been really lovely. So it's I'll Start Again Tomorrow. Otherwise, I've Told Myself, available everywhere you can buy a book. And then we've got a great website that has, I'm going to say, like a pretty robust library called Momentum. And that is essentially like a free portal for all of my workbooks and guides and the more tangible homework that is really meaningful and effective for people to do. All free, which is great. And And then is the world of social media. So here we are with Instagram and Facebook and all the other stuff. And we'll be releasing some courses and some new coaching programs and things like that towards the end of this year, beginning of next year.
I love it. And I like the idea of a workbook because I think there's something that writing things down and actually drawing the target you want to hit is a very essential to changing. And it really was helpful to me. And when you put pen to paper, brain registers the information differently than if you just think it or talk it. Absolutely. This is my own 2 cents and my own experience.
No, I mean, like literally proven by science. You are 100% right. Yeah. And it's the best way.
Well, have a beautiful day and much success on all the things you're doing. And good luck with the kids and all those things. Like I always say, I couldn't wait. And my kids are grown, but when they were little, I can't wait for them to wake up and I can't wait for them to go to sleep.
I have so much more empathy for my parents now. Right. I grew up believing that they were the monsters and I was like, my parents are monsters. Now I'm like, oh, good Lord. I don't know how you did what you did.
Shout out to all the good parents out there.
Right. Your kids will thank you one day. Just stay the course.
All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Bob. It was so nice.
Much appreciation for you folks listening to The Exploding Human. The website is theexplodinghuman.com. The YouTube channel is The Exploding Human with Bob Nickman. I want to thank Sonia Jhas once again for being on the show. Check out her TED Talk, read her book, check her out on all the social media, and you guys have a fabulous day. Bye.